They say the forest holds memories older than any human word. Between deep roots and winds that whisper secrets, there lies a village forgotten by maps, but remembered by spirits. The Ashen village, there. Every stone has a meaning. Every river is treated as a relative, and each night is lulled by the sound of drums that echo to the stars. It was in this place, hidden from the world, that Nira was born, a young guardian with restless eyes, able to see what no one else could. Since childhood, she dreamed of a secret valley, a place of luminous flowers and stones engraved with mysterious symbols, dreams that seemed like fantasy, but which, little by little, began to invade reality. And that's the story you're about to hear. The journey of Nira, the guardian, who decided to follow the invisible signs of the forest. A path full of enigmas, unexpected encounters, and revelations that would forever change her life and the fate of the tribe itself. Before we continue, tell me, are you already subscribed to the channel? If not, please subscribe now, like, and comment what you think. This helps keep stories like this alive, so more people can hear the ancient voices that echo in the forest. It was night, and the forest seemed to breathe along with whoever dared to cross it. The wind made the treetops dance, as if they held secrets no one should hear. The branches creaked beneath the feet of those who passed by, and each sound echoed like a subtle warning. The air was humid, laden with the strong scent of wet earth, reminding us that everything here was alive, even the silence. And in that silence, something larger seemed to watch, hidden among the shadows. During the day, the same forest changed its appearance. The light filtering through the leaves created patterns on the ground, almost like symbols left by ancient gods. The birds sang strange songs, mixing melody with omens. There were clearings where the grass grew golden, as if touched by some invisible energy. It was impossible not to feel that this place had eyes, watching every step, as if protecting or testing those who dare approach. The river waters meandered between the rocks, shining like broken mirrors, reflecting fragments of a hidden world. The sound of the current was hypnotic, almost a lullaby meant to soothe the forest spirits. Sometimes, dense mists would suddenly appear, covering everything, leaving only shadows around. At such times, even the bravest felt their hearts race, knowing the forest didn't reveal everything at once, only what it wanted to reveal. And among ancient trees, intertwined roots, and paths that seemed to move on their own, the perfect setting for stories that would never be forgotten, emerged. For there, every stone hid memories, every shadow carried symbols, and every whisper of the wind brought messages from time immemorial. It was on this enchanted stage, where the real and the imaginary intertwined, that the Ashen village found its home, sustaining its life amid mysteries that not even the elders dared to decipher. In the heart of the forest, sheltered by trees so tall they seemed to touch the sky, stood the Ashen village. Its straw and wood huts formed circles, as if to mimic the cycles of the moon. Every detail seemed carefully crafted, from the woven baskets to the designs engraved on the walls. Here, every object held a story, every corner held meaning, and nothing was created by chance. It was a village that breathed with the forest. Ashen people believed that the spirits of the forest were ancient guardians. Every morning, before sunrise, the elders would chant in thanksgiving for life and invisible protection. Children learned early on to respect the river, the rocks, the winds, as if they were close relatives. There was no separation between humans and nature, because, for them, everything was part of the same sacred body. It was a simple life, but imbued with profound meaning. On full moon nights, the village would be lit with torches and dances would continue into the early hours. The Ashen believed that at these moments, the veil between worlds thinned, and their ancestors could hear their prayers. It was common to see young people painting their bodies with traces of charcoal and anato, as symbols of courage. Every movement, every chant, every drum, echoed like a direct conversation with the invisible, and those who watched felt goosebumps, But there were secrets that were never spoken aloud, places in the forest where no one dared tread, stories whispered only among the Ashen village, even surrounded by harmony, carried within its very essence the weight of mystery. And it was in this space of silence and reverence that Nira, the young guardian, grew up, her destiny already seemingly entwined with shadows and enigmas that not even the wisest could explain. Nira was a young woman with a profound gaze, always attentive to details others overlooked. Her long hair, dark as a moonless night, fell over her shoulders, contrasting with the subtle makeup that streaked her face. As a guardian, her mission was to watch over the village's boundaries, but deep down she carried something greater, an insatiable curiosity. There was a restlessness within her that not even the elders could quell. Since childhood, Nira demonstrated a unique. While the other children were distracted by games, she remained silent, listening to the wind, watching the birds, deciphering markings no one else saw. Many called her a dreamer, others the chosen one, but there were those who whispered that her ways were dangerous, because she seemed to see beyond her means. And in the Ashen village, seeing too much could be a burden. Even at a young age, Nira was respected. Her courage on hunts, her firm grip on her spear, and the way she faced the unknown made her a role model. But behind her strength lay a sensitive soul, deeply aware of the signs of the forest. Sometimes her eyes would wander to the horizon, as if searching for answers no one else dared see. There was something in her essence that cried out for paths yet untrodden, and although she honorably fulfilled her role as guardian, deep down she knew she wasn't born solely to protect. The dreams that visited her night after night, filled with symbols and enigmas, were like calls from another world, calls that echoed ever louder, as if fate itself were telling her that her journey would not be like that of the other. And so it was that the secret of the valley began to blossom within her, even before it was discovered. Nira's nights were never ordinary. While the village slept in silence, lulled by the sound of crickets and the rushing waters of the river, she was transported to other places. In her dreams, she saw a hidden valley, shrouded by mist-covered mountains and trees that shone as if made of light. It was a place so real that upon waking, she could still smell the flowers and feel the chill of the mist on her skin. For her, these weren't just dreams, they were messages. At first, Nira believed it was a figment of her imagination, but the more the visions repeated, the more details emerged. Stones covered in ancient symbols, rivers flowing in opposite directions, and an invisible force that seemed to be calling her by name. It was impossible to ignore. With each new dream, the valley became more vivid, as if it were truly awaiting her arrival. The strange thing was that no one else in the village spoke of such a place. When Nira tried to comment, she received silent stares or vague answers. The elders changed the subject, the women looked away, and the children simply laughed, thinking it was a fabrication. This silence only increased her certainty that there was something hidden, a buried truth that no one dared reveal, and that truth seemed directly linked to her. Over time, the dreams ceased to be merely nighttime visions. Small signs began to appear during the day, moving shadows, birds following her, strange markings on the stones along the path. It was as if the valley had overflowed from her dreams and begun to seep into reality. Nira could no longer separate what was imagination and what was destiny, and each night as she closed her eyes, she knew the call grew more urgent. Over time, Nira began to notice that the forest spoke to her in ways no one else could perceive. Among the twisted roots, natural designs emerged like symbols etched by the earth itself. There were moss-covered stones that reflected figures under the moonlight, as if hiding ancient message. To most, they were mere coincidences, but to her, they were clues that always pointed in the same direction, the secret valley. The trees also held secrets. Some had subtle cuts in their trunks, marks so ancient they had already blended into the bark. Nira ran her hand over them and felt a strange warmth, as if they were still alive with the breath of her ancestors. Sometimes, a bird's song would repeat itself at odd intervals, as if a coded warning. Nothing escaped her attentive eyes and ears. The river, sacred to the Ashen people, also showed signs. At certain points, Its waters formed whirlpools that suddenly disappeared, as if opening invisible doors to another world. Nira would stand before them, fascinated, trying to decipher the movements, as if reading ancient writing. There were moments when the reflection in the water revealed more than reality, displaying images of places she had not yet known. But the strangest thing was that no one but her could see these signs. When she called someone to point them out, their eyes saw only stone, only tree, only river. This left Nira feeling torn between doubt and certainty. Was she imagining it all, or had she been chosen to see what remained hidden from others? This question haunted her every step, and the weight of the answer grew within her like an unquenchable flame. Within Nira, doubt grew like a root that spread silently. On one side, there was the voice of tradition, reminding her that a guardian's duty was to protect the village, not to challenge its limit. On the other, the call of dreams and signs, growing stronger, urging her to find the courage to go further. It was as if two worlds were battling within her, that of obedience and that of discovery. On lonely nights, sitting by the fire, Nira wondered if she would have the strength to bear the truth if she ever found it. After all, what if the valley wasn't just a place, but a dangerous secret the elders were deliberately hiding? The fear of betraying her people weighed heavily on her, but the fear of ignoring her destiny weighed even more heavily. And amidst these fears, the flame of curiosity continued to burn. As she walked through the village, her heart sank. She watched the children playing, the women braiding necklaces, the men preparing weapons for hunting. Everything so familiar, so safe, yet at the same time, every detail seemed to whisper to her that there was something beyond the routine, something that the simple life couldn't explain. It was like living in a beautiful but incomplete dream, where an essential part was always hidden. Nira knew she couldn't ask too many questions, because each attempt brought only silence or reprimand. But she also knew that ignoring the call was impossible. The dilemma was building inside her like a wave about to break, and deep down, she felt that the moment of choosing between the safety of the village and the mystery of the forest was approaching faster than she imagined. One night, when the stars were particularly bright, Nira was summoned to meet with the village elders. The circle of older men and women sat in silence, lit only by the central flame of the fire. Their weather-beaten faces seemed to carry not only wisdom but also secrets that weighed more heavily than any spear. Nira sensed that there she would hear words that would change her path. The eldest among them, in a firm, measured voice, spoke of the forest's limit. He said that beyond the sacred borders existed forces that should not be disturbed. He told of travelers who had followed strange signs and never returned. It wasn't just a warning, it was a veiled order for her to stay away from what she was not allowed to know. Another elder, with a deep gaze, mentioned the dreams. Without Nira having spoken, he revealed that others had experienced similar visions. However, he warned that such dreams were deceptive, created to divert the chosen from their true mission. Each word carried weight, as if trying to extinguish the fire of curiosity growing within her. But the more they spoke, the more that fire burned. In the end, the advice brought her no answers, only warnings. Nira left feeling watched, as if her every step were being measured. The elder's words echoed like chains, but deep in her chest, the uneasiness grew even stronger. She knew those warnings hid something greater, and perhaps, to discover the truth, she would need to break through the very limits everyone feared to cross. That early morning, lying in her hammock, Nira couldn't close her eyes. The words of the elders swirled in her mind like headwinds, but the call of her dreams spoke louder. She felt an unquenchable restlessness in her body, as if each heartbeat were a drum begging for departure. And so, in the silence of the night, she made a decision that would change her life forever. She knew she couldn't share her choice. If she did, the elders would stop her, and perhaps keep a close eye on her. So she acted in secret. She prepared a small leather bag, filled it with some dried roots, a necklace that had belonged to her mother, and her most trusted spear. She didn't need much, just the courage that had been with her since childhood. The rest, she would learn from the forest itself. While the village slept, Nira rose silently. She passed between the huts, observing the unlit torches and the peaceful faces of those dreaming. For a moment, she hesitated. This was her house, her people, her home, but she also knew that if she stayed, she would be denying her. She took one last look at the circle of the now extinguished fire, and walked toward the unknown. The darkness of the forest enveloped her like a cloak, and each step felt like a plunge into another world. Her heart raced, but not with fear, with anticipation. Nira didn't know what she would find beyond the forbidden borders, only that something awaited her, and for the first time, she walked alone, guided not by orders or traditions, but by the call only she could hear. The forest seemed different when Nira entered alone. The wind no longer sounded like a song, but rather like the whisper of ancient voices that tested her with every step. The branches creaked beneath her feet, and at times it felt like someone was following her closely. But when she looked back, there were only shadows moving among the trees. She felt as if she were being watched, not with hostility, but as if evaluating her worthiness to continue on. Animals that rarely appeared were silent. A jaguar stared at her from high branches, eyes glowing like fire in the darkness, but didn't. Instead, it seemed to follow her from afar, like a silent guardian. Further ahead, birds with colorful plumage suddenly flew past, as if to indicate a direction. Nira understood this not as a coincidence, but as signs that the forest was alive and attentive to her presence. The paths were treacherous, trails suddenly fell apart, roots tried to grab her ankle, and the ground seemed to move in circles. With each turn, a new question arose. Was she moving forward, or just returning to the same place? It was then that she remembered the symbols only she could see. Following these invisible marks, she stopped getting lost, and began to feel that the forest wanted to show her something. As night fell, the forest grew even denser. The darkness was almost absolute, and only fireflies illuminated her path, like small living torches. Exhaustion weighed heavily, but Nira's heart burned with one certainty. Each step brought her closer to the valley of her dreams, and even without knowing how long it would take, she pressed on, as if the forest itself were shaping her for what lay ahead. When the sun rose the next day, Nira believed the clarity would bring relief, but it wasn't long before a thick mist began to rise between the trees. At first, it seemed like a soft veil, but soon, it engulfed everything around her, leaving her surrounded by white. The forest disappeared, and the ground beneath her feet seemed to melt away, as if she were walking between worlds. It was impossible to discern her direction. The silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of her breathing. Nira held her hand out in front of her face, barely able to see her own fingers. She tried to guide herself by smell, by hearing, but even the birds had fallen silent. She felt as if she were in a suspended space, where time and place no longer followed familiar rules. The fog seemed to play with her, distorting every step. Suddenly, figures began to appear. First, tree shapes that hadn't been there before, then human silhouettes that disappeared as Nira tried to approach. Some voices echoed softly, calling her name, as if they were relatives or friends from the village. But she knew it was just the fog trying to confuse her mind, testing her courage to continue without losing herself in illusions. With her heart racing, Nira closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She remembered her dreams, the valley, and the signs only she could see. She decided to trust not what she saw, but what she felt. She moved forward, guided only by instinct and her inner calling. Each step was a challenge, but also a victory against the deceptive veil. And when the fog began to lift, Nira knew she was closer than ever to something great. When the mist parted like a torn veil, Nira realized she was no longer alone. Ahead, leaning on a staff made of twisted wood, stood him. His skin was marred by ancient scars, and his eyes held the hardness of someone who had faced more than ordinary life allows. He didn't seem like an enemy, nor a friend. He was a living enigma, standing silently before. The stranger wore worn furs, and a necklace of small bones around his neck, which jingled with every movement. His face was serious, but his eyes shone with a mixture of recognition and curiosity. Nira felt a shiver run down her spine, for she had the strange sensation of having seen this man before, perhaps in her dreams. It was as if his presence were as inevitable as fate. He spoke little, but enough to shake the young guardian's heart. "You heard the call too," he murmured, as if already privy to her innermost secrets. Nira didn't respond immediately,
trying to decipher whether it was truth or a trap. However, there was an ancient firmness in his voice, something that could not simply be ignored. He seemed to carry answers, but also danger. Without revealing much, the wanderer offered to accompany her for part of the journey, not with promises of help, but as someone walking the same quest. For Nira, accepting meant sharing her path with a stranger of uncertain intention. Refusing, however, could mean missing the chance to understand herself, and so, without saying yes or no, she continued walking, letting the forest itself decide whether they would continue together. The sound of the waters began to grow louder. Even before Nira saw the rift, it was like the roar of a colossal animal, vibrating in the air, and in her chest. When she finally reached the bank, she saw a wide, violent course, where the current swirled in dangerous spirals. The water foamed fiercely, as if it wanted to devour anyone who dared to cross. Crossing on foot was impossible. Retreat was unthinkable. The wanderer watched silently, as if he had faced this obstacle before. "This river is not just water," he said. "It is the guardian of a boundary." Nira approached, feeling the energy pulse. For an instant, she saw shapes in the water, human forms trapped in the eddies, arms reaching out for help. Were they spirits, or illusions created to keep her away? Either way, the sight made her shift. Remembering the signs only she could see, Nira walked along the bank until she found rocks arranged in a curious pattern. They seemed to form a path, but only the keenest of eyes could decipher them. With each leap from one rock to another, the current tried to pull her along, roaring louder, as if the river itself refused to allow her to cross. "Still, Nira," he moved forward firmly, without letting fear take over. When she reached the other bank, her legs trembled, but she also felt immense relief. The hiker followed her, but his eyes showed surprise. It was as if he hadn't expected her to be able to decipher the enigma of the waters. Nira understood then that the forest didn't just want to test her. It wanted to shape her, test her, make her stronger. And the river, now at her back, seemed to whisper that the hardest part was yet to come. After days of walking, the forest began to change. The air grew lighter, and a strange luminosity seemed to emerge from the ground. When the woods parted, the valley she had so often seen in her dreams appeared before her. High mountains surrounded the place like walls, and in the center, a plain covered in flowers that glowed softly, as if carrying the moonlight itself. The sight was so beautiful, it took her breath away. Every detail seemed enchanting. The trees had golden trunks and leaves that reflected different colors with each breath of wind. Small streams ran silently, but when they fell on the rocks, they produced melodies reminiscent of ancient chants. The valley was not just a place, it was like a living temple, where time dared not pass. Nira felt that there, every stone and every flower held memories of the world before her tribe even existed. As she set foot on the soft grass, she felt an energy surge through her, as if welcomed by the very heart of the earth. The wanderer watched her from afar, but didn't come too close, as if afraid to awaken something by crossing that threshold. For Nira, however, the valley was familiar, almost like a reunion. It was as if she had always belonged there, not in the village where she had grown up.
But she soon realized that the beauty hid something greater. Deep in the valley, among moss-covered stones, were ancient inscriptions, carved in a language that seemed older than any Ashen chant. The markings glowed softly, beckoning her to decipher them. Nira understood then that she had not reached the end of her search, but only the beginning of the true mystery. Nira approached the moss-covered stones, and the more she brushed the surface with her hands, the more symbols revealed themselves. They were spiral markings, intertwined lines, and human figures, with arms raised to the sky. With each detail uncovered, she felt a shiver run down her skin. This wasn't just ancient art. It was a message left by a people who knew secrets her tribe had never shared. As she watched, something inside her seemed to awaken. The symbols glowed subtly, reacting to her touch, as if recognizing her. Nira felt her heart race, a mixture of fascination and fear. Flashes of images appeared in her mind, ancient people walking through the same valley, rituals before the stones, chants that echoed the forest itself. It was as if she were accessing memories stored in the silence of time. The wanderer, still at a distance, warned her in a deep voice. Not everyone is ready to know what these marks hide. Nira turned, intrigued, but knew she couldn't back down. With each symbol she read with her eyes and intuition, she realized that the inscriptions spoke of the origin of the Ashen tribe. And what's more, they spoke of a rupture, a secret that had been buried, never to be revealed again. The young guardian now understood why the elders feared someone would follow the signs. That truth was like a double-edged sword. It could strengthen the village, but it could also shatter its foundation. Among the engraved designs was a recurring figure, a woman with an intense gaze, holding something similar to the amulet Nira wore around her neck. The connection was too clear to ignore. The silence was broken when the wanderer finally approached the stone. His gaze, once distant, was now heavy, as if carrying years of memories. He touched one of the inscriptions with his fingertips, and in a grave tone, revealed, "I've been here before, long before you were born." Nira stared at him in surprise. This mysterious figure wasn't just a lost traveler. There was something about him that deeply connected him to the valley. His voice breaking, he recounted how he had once been a guardian of his own Ashen tribe. But when he attempted to reveal the secrets hidden by the council, he was banished and condemned to wander outside the village. The scars on his body bore witness, not only to battles, but also to punishments suffered for daring to question what he shouldn't have. To the Ashen, his name had been erased, but the valley had kept his memory alive. "These marks speak of the truth that was hidden from us all," she continued. "The tribe was born here, in this valley, but the elders chose to sever that bond, fearing the power that could consume them all." Nira felt her chest burn, as if a part of her had always known. This explained the dreams, the signs, the feeling of being connected to something greater than the village itself. But the revelation was fraught with pain. The wanderer looked her in the eye and said, "Now you must decide whether to carry this burden. I followed this path and lost everything. If you choose the truth, perhaps your fate will be no different." The words echoed in Nira's mind like thunder, and deep down she knew there was no turning back. The valley had chosen to reveal itself to her, for a reason. Nira's heart split in two. On one side, the voices of the elders echoed in her memory, urging prudence and silence. On the other, the valley pulsed before her, almost screaming at her to bring her truth back to the village. If she revealed what she had discovered, she could change the fate of the Ashen forever. But what if this change brought ruin, fear, or division? It was a weight that seemed too great for one person to bear. She walked in circles through the valley, trying to gather her thoughts. The soft glow of the flowers illuminated her steps, and each sound of nature seemed to bring a different response. A bird's song told her to keep a secret. A breath of wind told her to reveal. Nira realized that the forest wasn't giving her a single direction. It wanted the decision to be hers. It was a test, not of strength, but of soul. The wanderer watched her, without interfering. His eyes revealed compassion, but also the shadow of someone who had already made the same choice and paid dearly for it. "The burden of truth is not for everyone," he murmured. These words echoed deeply, but Nira was undeterred. She knew her destiny would not be defined by fear, but by the courage to listen to what her heart insisted on telling her. However, doubt lingered like an uncertain flame. What was better, to protect the tribe from what they didn't understand, or to reveal the secret and risk their own harmony? In the midst of this dilemma, Nira looked up at the starry sky that covered the valley and realized that, whatever her choice, she would never be the same. The future of the Ashen was, somehow, in his hands. Nira spent the night, keeping vigil, sitting before the ancients. The fire in the small fire flickered, casting shadows that danced like spirits around her. Within her, a silent battle raged. Part of her wanted to shout the truth to the world, Part of her feared that this cry would destroy everything she loved. The valley seemed to mirror her confusion, sometimes glowing softly, sometimes sinking into a heavy silence. She closed her eyes and relived every scene in the village. The children's laughter, the elders' stories, the warmth of the fire on celebratory night. She wondered what it would be like to return and declare that all this had been born from a forgotten secret. Would the village listen to her, or reject her, as they had the wanderer? Doubt gnawed at her soul, and each memory brought more questions than answers. But she also saw the sign, the stones shining beneath her touch, the dreams that led her there, the animals that made their way through the forest. She couldn't believe it was all coincidence. There was a purpose, even if she couldn't fully understand. Nira felt destiny calling her, but she couldn't say what the price would be for listening to it. Between the flames of the fire and the surrounding darkness, Nira understood that the real fight wasn't outside, but within. It took courage, not only to face the dangers of the forest, but to face herself. The internal confrontation was the hardest of all, for there was no enemy to defeat, only choices to be made, and these choices would shape not only her life, but the future of the tribe itself. When the sun rose over the valley, dyeing the sky golden, Nira knew it was time to return. Her heart still weighed heavy with unanswered questions, but within her there was a new strength, as if she had crossed an invisible threshold. She took one last look at the luminous stones and flowers, etching every detail into her memory. The valley hadn't given her all the answers, but it had given her something even more precious, the certainty that her life would never be the same. The return journey was different. The forest, previously full of obstacles, now seemed to gently give way. The animals watched her silently, as if recognizing a change in her. Even the treacherous fog seemed less dense, as if accepting her passing. It was as if the forest had tested her, and now welcomed her no longer as a visitor, but as part of its secrets. Reaching the riverbank, Nira paused for a moment. The roar of the water no longer frightened her as it had before. With firm steps, she crossed the rocks, feeling that each movement carried a strength she hadn't possessed on the way there. The hiker accompanied her, but in profound silence, respecting the invisible weight she carried on her shoulders. They both knew they wouldn't return the same. Upon seeing the first huts of the Ashen village, Nira took a deep breath. She didn't run, she didn't shout, she didn't attract attention. She entered discreetly, as if returning from a simple vigil in the forest. But in her eyes there was something new, a flame that shone beyond the comprehension of others. She held within herself a secret no one else knew, and the silence she carried was as powerful as any revelation. On her return, Nira brought neither riches nor grandiose words, but something small that seemed to carry immense weight. In her hands rested a smooth stone taken from the valley, marked with a spiral symbol that glowed subtly in the moonlight. To anyone else, it might have been just an ordinary stone, but to her it was a living fragment of the secret, a reminder that the valley existed and had chosen her. She kept the object in a small leather pouch, strapped to her chest. Whenever she touched it, she felt a gentle vibration, like a heartbeat. Sometimes, silently, the stone emitted a faint glow, illuminating her fingers, as if trying to reveal something hidden. Nira knew it was no ordinary amulet, but she also didn't fully understand its power. It was a gift, but also an enigma. She never showed the stone to anyone, not even those closest to her, not even those she trusted. There was a certainty within her that it wasn't time to The engraved symbol seemed to whisper that her secret still needed to ripen, like fruit that cannot be harvested before its due time. Silence was her form of protection, both for herself and for the village. And so she continued her life as a guardian, with the same watchful eye and the same courage. But now, every time she walked through the forest, the weight of the stone against her chest reminded her that she carried something far greater than any spear could defeat. A symbol left by the valley, an invisible link between her and the mystery that could never be erased. Time passed, and life in the Ashen village went on. Nira continued her routine as a guardian, silent and watchful, never revealing what she had seen beyond the forest. But one quiet night, something unexpected happened. A village child ran up to her,
eyes wide with astonishment, and whispered, "I dreamed of a valley of light, a hidden place that called my name." The girl's words made Nira's heart race. The childlike voice innocently echoed the same images that had tormented her for so many years. Glowing flowers, stones engraved with symbols, rivers that sang like spirits. It was impossible to deny. The call was now echoing in another soul, as if the mystery wasn't just hers, but part of something greater that stretched through Ashen blood. Nira watched the child tenderly and silently. She couldn't say anything, couldn't reveal her secret, but she knew that, like her, this little girl would also be guided beyond the village limits. The valley didn't choose just one person. It spoke through the generations, awakening guardians when the time was right. It was a cycle no one could break. And that night, sitting before the fire, Nira understood that her journey was not over. Fate had merely opened a new door, and now another life would walk toward the mystery. The valley was not a distant place. It was a living promise, echoing through time. And with a faint smile, Nira knew she was no longer alone in her secret. Nira's story is lost and found in the breath of the forest. Some say she brought back only silence. Others believe her soul still carries the glow of the hidden valley. But the truth is that each guardian is born with a unique calling, and the greatest secret of life lies not in what we find, but in what we choose to keep within ourselves. Ashen Village still exists, firmly rooted in roots and rivers, but none of its inhabitants are ever the same after hearing this legend. Deep down, everyone knows there are invisible signs all around us, waiting only for those brave enough to see them. And perhaps, who knows, you too have felt this calling at some point in your life. Nira's journeys serve as a reminder that every choice is a portal, and every secret, a flame. Sometimes the forest doesn't reveal everything at once, just enough to keep us walking. The rest is up to the heart to decipher. And if you've made it this far, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave your comment. This helps keep ancestral stories alive, and bring these voices of the forest to more people. Until the next meeting, when another legend will be told.